Hey, so tonight is about having a brief understanding of the two key project management approach. We're looking at waterfall and agile methodology. Okay, so in the course of tonight, we will bear with me. We'll we'll have we'll look at the meaning of the two approaches. We'll have just a brief overview of their origin, and then we'll try to understand their model, the characteristics, what is the characteristic of each of them. And then we'll look at the similarities, few similarities and differences between them, and then look at some examples of some projects that are suitable for each of the approaches. Okay, and then we go into the meaning. Okay, so waterfall methodology is a linear and sequential approach to project management, okay, where each phase of waterfall must be completed before you move to um the next phase of it. So it's like a one-way street, kind of, the name waterfall, you know how waterfall happens. So water falls down, it doesn't go back up, it just goes down. So that is what it means that once this one is done, you that water hits before the next water hits, like a stairs, sort of, as you can see in the kind of a brief pattern here. So you finish the phase before you go into the next one. So it's like a one-way street. Once you moved from one, you don't go back to it, or minimal changes really. You don't go back to it. You just move from one, you complete that before you go into another one. And this approach is best suited for projects that are, with clear and well-defined refinement or requirement from onset. And it's called linear. You can see that linear and the sequential has been highlighted there for a purpose. So it's just to explain that that means a process that follows a very fixed step-by-step order. Okay, where, like I said, you have to complete each phase before you move into the next one, and you can't go back to the previous stage, once you've moved on from it because it has been signed off. Once you sign off from it, you are not able to go back to it, and it has to be completed before you move to the next one. Agile, however, is a method where it's flexible and is iterative approach. Iterative just means repetitive approach to project management, and it focuses on delivering work in small manageable chunks, which are called iterations or sprints. Okay, so with agile, the emphasis is laid on flexibility, teamwork, and also delivering results quickly. It delivers results faster than waterfall. So instead of planning everything from the onset and following a strict, process or pattern like we see in waterfall, with agile, it breaks the project into smaller parts and then adapts to changes as it goes along. Okay, so we want to quickly have a look at the origin of waterfall. How did waterfall as a project management approach, how did it start? So waterfall methodology originated from the manufacturing and construction industries. That's where projects have steps needed to be completed in a very strict and sequential manner, as we've explained the waterfall approach to be. An example is you can't, when you're building, you can't build the roof before you lay the foundation. The foundation comes first, and until that is completed, you don't go to the next process. You don't go to, the ground floor, sorting out the structures of the ground floor and everything and all that. The roof doesn't come in until maybe you've gotten to the level you want, you've done the lintel or whatever comes before the roof and all that. So it's sequentially, it has to start from A, B, C, it's step by step. You can't do the step four before you do step two. It has to follow from step one to step two. That is how it goes, and that's the origin. Okay, so the approach was that was what was being used then, and that's because in the manufacturing and the construction industry, you have clear, well defined um requirements. they are well defined in manufacturing industry also and all that. Whatsoever you're manufacturing, definitely there has to be the part of maybe getting the materials that are needed, doing one or two things to it before you even go into actually producing it. Actually, you will have to have a prototype or things like that, have a design that you need to look at before you manufacture what needs to be manufactured. So you don't just jump into the factory and start manufacturing things. There are well laid plan, upfront planning that needs to be done before it gets to that. So with Waterfall, it's like you said, it's more about getting one step to finish before the other. And it's so suited with the manufacturing industry and the construction industry, other industry, but mainly these are the two key industries that Waterfall project management originated from. And then later on in the 1970s, it was later adapted into the software development um, industry also side of things. As companies, well, however, as companies such as banks, government agencies, and likes as they develop, when they're developing large scale softwares in the 70s and all that, they were able to use Waterfall to manage the project. And that's because of the thorough documentation and clear project stages that Waterfall had. Then that was why they were using it. So, and too many businesses also, it was able to provide predictability for them, control and compliance. Government, you talk about government project, you have to talk about a lot of regulations, things that need to be planned, that has to go align with regulations and things like that. So Waterfall was adapted for those projects, those large scale software projects then. However, it has its own limitations, and its limitation was what led to the emergence of Agile. So we're talking about in the early 2000s, as technology was evolving, customers' needs were rapidly changing, and one of some of the Waterfall limitation became very evident. Most of its limitations became very evident, and like I said, that was what led to the emergence of Agile. So some of those limitations were the late discovery of issues, because by the time you're doing from one phase to the other and everything, they were not able to go back to adapt to changes. The late discoveries at the end of the project, they are finding out that okay, so you finished, you've given the project and all that, you've make your deliverables, they are not aligning with maybe the requirements of the end users at the start at all. By the time they're testing, they're integrating, oftentimes, which is at the end, they're finding a lot of which issues which they can't go back, to correct anymore, or which might cost a lot of money, to go back and to rectify. And then there were issues of adapting to those changes. It's a lot of a headache going back, like I said, to change things. And because software development industry, like we said, is fast, it's fast growing. There's a lot of rapid changes that are going on. While your company is using Waterfall to manage that project and all that, and are waiting till the end. Let's assume this project timeline is, let's say maybe a year, where you're waiting for the year to deliver your the project to the end users. Things have moved on in the industry, and you find out that maybe the feature you have developed and all that has become also obsolete in the industry. People are not using it anymore. There's a new cutting edge thing that is out there and all that, and because of that, Waterfall was not really that suited, for software development work. Because of the slow delivery of things, because things have to be delivered at the end of the project, like I said, and then it might become obsolete by the time it comes out. The end user will say, hey, we're not using this anymore, we're moving on to something. That's money wasted, effort wasted, time wasted, kind of not wasted, because something was created but not suited for what it is meant to be used for, or the time it was meant to be delivered any longer. And as a result of that, that was what led to the emergence of agile approach of managing projects, especially software projects. When a group of 17 software when a group of 17 software developers came together in 2001 to discuss and agree a new approach of managing work that differs from the tradition way, or let me say waterfall approach of managing the project. So their proposal emphasizes adaptability, they're looking at collaboration, and then they're looking at iterative process approach. And this was detailed out in a document they came up with, all agreed and came up with, that is called the Agile Manifesto. Okay, so under the Agile Manifesto is a foundational document that underpins the entire Agile methodology. Everything Agile methodology stands for was discussed and was pinned under what they call the Agile Manifestos, and this reflects the mindset of these developers, and it also reflects the mindset of software development and project management that prioritizes flexibility, collaboration, and customer satisfaction. Okay, and these three things are composed in their four core values and the 12 principles guiding the agile project management approach. It makes it to be kind of transformative in their approach. They are delivering high quality of software in the fast changing environment. They are revolutionizing the way projects are being managed across not just software industry alone, but a lot of industries, a lot of professions now are using Agile in order to manage projects in their approach, even if it's not just development, even in services now, Agile is being used also to manage projects. Okay, so quickly, we just want to look at the model. We want to look at the characteristics. What makes waterfall, and what makes agile. Okay, so earlier on, what we talk about waterfall. So if you look at the waterfall model in that you're saying, you can see the stages. So you can see that the first stage is the requirement. So they have about 6 stages of phases. So you have the requirement. So they need to gather the requirement first. They collect all the project requirements up front. They have everything. And until that is completed, they don't go to the design stage or phase. So the design phase is where they create blueprints. You have diagrams, you have workflows, you have all the project, how the project will be executed. That is the stage where that is being used. If we use example of the construction that we're talking about, the requirement stage will be where they have all the information up front of the kind of building they want to build, what is the building for, who are the audience for that building, is it a school, will it be for little children, all those things. And then you talk about the design, we're looking at the blueprint, you're looking at the architecture of how the building is going to look and all that. And then you have the implementation stage. The implementation stage now for construction, I'm just using construction as an example now, will be where the building starts. Okay, that's the building of the actual product or executing that plan that has been put in place. That's where that is carried out. And you know that, like we said earlier on, one stage has to finish before the other. So the foundation will be laid first. The bricklayers will come and do what they need to do. The electricians will come in and do what they need to do. The electricians won't come in while the foundation is laid to do what they need to do, because there's no building, there's no wall for them to run their cables and everything. If there are any cables that needs to go underneath after the foundation, maybe they come in, they do that, they go again, and then every everyone coming in has to finish what they are doing before the next person comes in. An electrician with all their cabling and all that maybe would need to come in. If they are putting the cabling behind the wall or behind the plastering and all that and everything, they can't be working together. One has to finish what they're doing before the other one comes in to do what they need to do. And then you have the testing stage, which is the stage where they check for defects, they ensure that the final product meets the initial requirements that is being laid. Maybe this is the time when, I'm not sure, where the surveyor comes in to check things, and an electrical engineer comes in to check to make sure that everything goes in line with the regulation and all that. Imagine if the whole house has been completed, painted, features put in and all that, and the electrical engineer to check the things comes in and say, oh, the wiring is wrong here, in line with the regulation and all that. We're talking about breaking the wall. If those wires have gone behind the walls and all that, destroying the features, which is going to cost money, because all those things were completed before the testing stage came about. And then you're looking at deployment. Some put deployment and maintenance together, but I just separated them so that we can explain them. So deployment is when you deliver the product to the end users, and then maintenance is when you start making minor, updates if needed to it to maintain what has been created. So that is the framework, so to say, or the model, if I can put it that way, of waterfall. However, when you come to Agile, on the other side, Agile follows an iterative development process, like I said earlier on. So the project is developed in small, repeatable circles instead of a long process. So as you can see, so those small circles are called sprints. As you can see, you have the first sprint, you have the second sprint, and the third sprint. So what happens is in the first sprint, like we said, they're doing everything that needs to be done in small chunks. They're not doing the whole together. So for the first bit, what we need to do there, we plan what we need to do. We have a design, a wireframe of what needs to be done. They develop, the testers test, they deploy it, it's reviewed. So that review is the end users reviewing what has been done at that stage. Okay, that is that early review is what makes Agile stand out a bit, because the end users are able to review and make corrections. I make corrections to say, oh, this isn't what I want. Well, you got a bit of it, but I'd like this to be like this to be like this, and all that. And then the team has to, make adjustment. That's why it's flexible and it's adaptable. They make adjustments, they deploy it, they launch it if it needs to be launched, or if they're just keeping it, that is launched. And then they go into the second one, the second bit. Okay, so after we've done this one, this is the next thing we're doing. Again, it follows the same pattern again. We plan it, we design it, we develop, we test, we deploy, and then the end user gets to review at that stage again also. So they review it. If they are fine with it, if they need to make any adjustment based on the end user's feedback, that is done, and then they move on again. And so you can see that if that is done as they're going on and everything, at the end, when the whole project is released, at the end of the timeline for that project and all that, the end user is happy because they've been part of the process all along. With Waterfall, the end user is not part of the process until the end. But with Agile, the end user is part of the process, is part of the whole process, through from the beginning all through. They are getting their feedbacks from them, they are inspecting, they're reviewing what has been done, and they are giving their feedbacks, and the feedback is being acted upon. Changes are being made based on their feedback. So those are the characteristics of the two approaches, Waterfall and also Agile. So for Agile to be effective, there are three main characteristics that has to be at play. I talked about customer collaboration. So the customer has to be in it. The stakeholders have to provide feedback at each stage. Okay, and that's the review that you see at each stage, and then they ensure that the final products meet their need. They are happy at the end, of the project because they've been part of it all along. There has to be flexibility and adaptability. The flexibility comes in where the feedback of the stakeholders or the end users needs to be worked on, needs to be implemented immediately. So the changes are made at any time based on the feedbacks and then the evolving requirements. So a requirement can change, okay, when it comes to Agile, because an end user can tell you this is what I want. When you give them should I use the word, the first skeletal part of the project that you give them can help them to see that, okay, this is what we said we want, but looking at what you've given up to us, I think we ourselves are not, kind of not right, but it helps them to see things better in a better frame. Visual gives you a much, much better frame of things. And then they're able to adapt their requirement to say, oh, rather than this, we'd rather have the requirement to be like this. And being able to be flexible and adapt to that changes that they bring is another very good characteristics of Agile. And the last one is the cross-functional team. So you can see that the lot of people that come into those circles to make things work. We're looking at the business analysts, you're looking at the designers, UI UX designers are there, you're looking at the developers themselves, you're looking at the testers, and then all of them work together to ensure that the first feature is developed, deployed, reviewed by the stakeholders before it's launched, and then they go into another set. So they have a cross-functional team that needs to work together. They all work together in a particular if I can use the word, I don't want to use the word stage because they don't have stages, they just have circles, but they all work together in the same circle that we call sprints, okay, as they go along. So those are the characteristics of the two approach that we're looking at. Okay, so when it comes to framework, yeah, um uh the framework for waterfall is waterfall itself. Okay, so those 5 stages or 6 stages you see are the frameworks of waterfall. So waterfall, its faces are its framework. It doesn't have any special framework, like unlike agile. Agile has multiple frameworks, but Waterfall doesn't have framework. So some of the framework of Agile, which we will not go into, I just want to make mention of them so that we can cover all the other things we have for this session. Is one of them the key ones, not all, they're not limited to these three, but I think these are just the key ones that are being used. You talk about Scrum, you talk about Kanban, you talk about safe, and then there are other ones, they're lean and the other ones, but with Agile has framework, but when it comes to waterfall is fixed and structured the way it is, and that's why it doesn't have framework, because it doesn't have the there's no flexibility and adaptability in it. Now, these frameworks that Agile has, they still have to they align with the principles of Agile. So just because they are framework, remember they are just framework under the main umbrella, which is Agile. So the principles of Agile, the core knowledge of Agile, the core principles of Agile still aligns with this framework. So I just thought I should quickly chip that in before we go into something else. Okay. So though there are differences in approaches with the two methodology, there are also some similarities in them, and then we just want to quickly look at three of those similarities. So one of the similarities between them as a project manager is that they are both used to manage projects, and ensure deliverables to the stakeholders. Even though one is longer than the other, they are still project management approach. So that's one of the similarities. The other one is that they are both, both approaches, they define certain stages or phases of the project. Like for Waterfall, we talked about the requirements, this and that. For Agile, also, we're looking at all those you're looking at the circles also. So in waterfall, with waterfall is linear. You have the stages, requirements, design, implementation, testing, and all that. Even though with Agile, with waterfall, one has to finish before the other. While in Agile, they have those stages also, but it's just it's it works together iteratively in one. Every of those stages work together in one sprint or in one circle. So they all have their stages also. So planning, is like developing has to come also in Agile before you test. They have to develop before the tester test, but they are working in the same sprint rather than finishing the whole development before the whole testing starts. That's not the case. So they both have the stages and the phases of a project also in them. And then lastly, also, both of them have a goal, and the goal is to meet the customer's requirement. The goal of the project is to, at the end, give the customer, all the stakeholders, deliver to them. Okay, so that's another of the similarities. So quickly we go into the differences that we have in them. Okay, so project structure wise, for waterfall, we said it is linear. That means it's step by step. A step has to finish before the next one starts. And then the fixed requirement is fixed. So once the project requirements are set at the beginning, changes are difficult to accommodate. It's not flexible at all, like its counterpart Agile. So with Agile, you have iterative and incremental. So iterative, we're repeating it, and then we're increasing it. So every value that is delivered at the end of sprint one, um adds to at sprint 2 adds to what you've done in sprint 1. By the time you get to sprint 3, the value that you deliver in sprint 3 adds to what has been delivered in sprint 1 and in sprint 2, and that is how it becomes incremental as you go along. And then we talk about it being, while waterfall is fixed, agile is flexible, is adaptable. Okay. And then when we're looking at the flexibility and adaptability, we're looking at low flexibility in waterfall, low to non-flexibility, in waterfall, while in agile it's all about flexibility. It's very, very high when it comes to flexibility. And then the planning and the documentation for waterfall is extensive, is very, very comprehensive upfront planning. They have to do a lot of planning up front, the design, the details, everything up front has to be done. Every requirement and specification is typically defined before even the project begins. While when it comes to agile, agile focuses, like we said, more on flexibility, iterative development. So the documentation, it's not as if there's no documentation up front when it comes to agile, but it's minimal. It's not as extensive and comprehensive as you have in waterfall. And then when you're looking at the customer involvement is limited, in limited to none, if I can put it that way, in waterfall. Okay, so apart from the start, when they have all the comprehensive planning and all that, and they get the customer involved to get all the requirements that they need and all that, their involvement is limited. While in agile, that is one of the key characteristics. The customer collaboration, customer involvement is continuous. Like we said, at every sprint there is a review, so they are involved in the whole thing as they go along. And then the testing approach in waterfall is late. Okay, so the test late. The testing comes at its own stage, while with agile is continuous testing. Every sprint we test whatever has been developed, so that defects are identified, fixed, corrected, and things like that as they go along. Then the risk management in waterfall is very high, because the entire project is developed before it's tested and before even seen by the customer. So there is a high risk, of delivering a product that does not meet. There's a possibility of delivering a product that does not meet the customer's needs. However, this is reduced when it comes to agile, because you're carrying the customer along as you're going. You have a low risk of it not meeting their needs, because they are carried along as you're going on. And then when you look at the team structure and communication, in waterfall, it's specialized and it's a hierarchy, team that they have. So in waterfall, often it follows it waterfall follows a rigid structure, with separate roles. The analysts will come, they do what they need to do. The designers come, they do what they need to do. Developers come, they do what they need to do. Testers come. So one, like we said, some finish their own work, get it signed off before the other comes. So there's less collaboration between them because of that. Because once one finishes, and also whoever is managing the project gets it, they give it to them, they get it signed off before the next, specialized team comes in to do what they need to do. However, with agile is cross-functional. So with agile team, you have cross-functional. So meaning that all these people are working together, the analysts, the business analysts, the designers, the developers, the testers, they all form the team. Okay, and they work together as a team. They're working together. They're having the meetings that they have to have together. They're having their planning meetings. They're having their daily. There's a meeting called the daily stand-up, where they all come, to, and then discuss, plan better, look at things better. They're all in that review meeting also, most times when the stakeholders are reviewing what needs to be reviewed. So everybody knows what is going on. They have that shared understanding as they go along. They are collaborative team, and they work together like that. And then we're looking at the ideal, projects that are suited for um, the approaches. For waterfall, it has to be projects that are well defined in their requirements, with little changes expected. Like we said, in construction, they are well defined requirement. The specification from onset. The specification for the foundation is from onset, because they know the kind of building that they are putting there. That is the kind of foundation that is laid also when they're doing that. Okay, and because of that, those are the kind of projects that are suited, to that kind of to the waterfall approach. While with Agile, is rapid. It has any project that has a rapid changing environment is what is suited to it, and that's why it started in software development, because software is rapidly changing. It has a rapidly changing environment. But there are other projects right now, like I said, almost all the industries are making use of Agile now to deliver their project or the services that needs to be delivered. And then we just want to look few at some suitable, like we said, some ideal projects that are suitable for these the two approaches. So for waterfall, like I said, construction, we're looking at construction of a residential building. Okay. So construction follows a strict sequence, as you said. You have to plan first, you have to lay the foundation, you look at the structure, you look at the electrical, plumbing, finishing, and all that. So it has to happen in stages. Changes in later stage is either, like I said, costly or can't even happen, because if I don't know if it's possible when the surveyor comes and say, oh, the foundation is not being done properly, then that means the whole building has to come down. And that's a waste of, the finances that has gone into it, the time that has been spent, the effort that has been spent in it. So it has to follow that clear, defined, requirement, and that is why it's suited for that. It's also suited for like when you're talking about manufacturing a new automobile model now. You look at the design, you look at the prototyping, which is the design of it, you look at the testing, you look at the production. Production must be completed in that sequence. You can't jump into go and test the car when we've not even made the car, when the car has not been made. You can't jump into develop when there's no prototype. Yeah, so it has to follow a sequence, and the prototyping has to be completed before they start building. The testing can't come up until the car has been built, the car has been manufactured, before they can go and test. They can't go and test the tire alone. They can't go and test the steering or the steering wheel alone. Everything has to be put together before the testing aspect of things comes in. And that's why you see now there are times when some cars are being called back because of things that needs to be corrected. So they call some cars back, which is cost effective to the company that has manufactured those cars and everything. We're looking at publishing an academic textbook. Steps include researching. You have to research first, you have to write, you have to edit. You can't proofread when it has not been written. You have to write, and you have to have research, have content to what you want to write. You can't just start writing without all those steps being completed first before you start what you need to do. The formatting can't happen until the proofreading has been done, because the proofreading is what leads to the formatting. So the proofreading has to be completed before you start formatting or printing what needs to be printed. You can't go and start printing chapter 1 when it has not been proofread, or else if there are any correction made and all that, that printing that has been done is just waste of paper, waste of ink and all that. So all it requires sequential completion for it to be done, and the major revision after publication it will be costly and it will be impractical when you are reviewing it after the book has been published, or if that's been printed. Like I said, it will be very, very impractical to now say, oh, we want to review it now. There might be second version and third version and all that, but that first version cannot kind of be changed anymore once it has been published and all that. So that follows some sequential pattern also. And then you're looking at when you're designing a new passenger airplane model, just for that follows also we're looking at the new automobile model also, that follows the same pattern also, because there are strict regulatory approvals that needs to be done. Changes will be difficult once production is in place. You go and make a airplane without looking at the aviation policy or regulation and all that. It's tantamount to waste of money when you have to pull down whatever you have done because you didn't follow the sequential pattern. Check what needs to be checked before you even start what you're doing. And then you look at launching a large scale telecommunication network that has some sequential steps to follow. Also, you're looking at laying fiber optics, setting up towers, integrating software system that needs to be followed. All those things needs to be followed before you even talk about having the software system in place in the first place. You have to look at all the other things that needs to be completed before you move. Testing must be completed before the full deployment, but you can't do the testing after setting up the tower because the phone is not there yet. You've not made the software that is going to connect to the network that is coming from this tower that has been set up. Okay, so those are some of the projects that are very suitable. There are more than that, but those are some that are very suitable, to waterfall. And when you're looking at Agile, you're looking at some projects that are suitable to it. You're looking at developing an e-commerce website. It's an online shopping experience that needs regular updates. We're looking at software here, so you're looking at regular updates based on the user's behavior. You're looking at your competitors, strategies of the competitors, and all that. So there is rapid change. There's flexibility and adaptability that needs to go along in adding new features, maybe payment option, improving the UI, face interface of the website and all that. This happens in incremental sprints as you go along. And then we're looking at creating a digital marketing campaign also. That's another one that is frequently changing. Marketing trends are frequently changing. Strategies need to be adjusted based on real-time analytics. That's what they use. They use real-time analytics. So when you're developing such a campaign, you have to use Agile because there is a lot of changes. There has to be flexibility and adaptability. And you have to have different testing stages of that campaign. And that is why Agile will be a suited method or approach to run such a project. Also, when you're building an AI-based chatbot, okay? So AI development requires ongoing testing. We know it's the in thing now that is going on. And there are different companies that have their own different strategies and all that. So you want yours to quickly get into the hands, to quickly get into the hands of the end users and then adapt as you go along. So Agile also again is another suited approach for you um to be able to manage that project because like I said, it requires ongoing testing. We're talking about AI, data refinement. You're talking about learning things iteratively as you go along, and the gradual improvements that you need there would make Agile suited for that. And then we're looking also at quickly at a project where you have to launch a subscription-based online course. So content needs to be developed, tested. You need to adjust based on the student engagement and feedback. Either the student engagement and feedback, you're looking at the tutor's engagement and feedback. So you need to keep on be flexible and adapt based on the feedback that you're getting from those stakeholders and all that. So that makes Agile again very, very suited to that kind of project. And lastly, the healthcare patient portal. So with this one, we're looking at where a situation where a feature where you need to put in on the portal kind of being able to structure in appointment scheduling, telemedicine, patient records requires regular enhancement. People have different circumstances, their circumstances change, and that has to be kind of imputed or uploaded onto that kind of a portal. You're looking at Agile. However, I would say for healthcare patient portal at times, it could be a combination of both Waterfall and Agile, depending on the stage where it is. So you might have started with Waterfall, and just for them to maintain it, Agile comes into play. In such a stage, you have an hybrid. You have a combination of both Waterfall and Agile approach, managing that kind of a project. So those are just some few ones, not I just thought, okay, let's pick some few ones that we can look at and then look at the approach that are suitable for them. Okay, so for our task for this week, well, for the time when we meet the next week, I would like us to, before our next meeting, I'd like us to provide an example for each project management approach that we have talked about tonight. So we're looking at Waterfall and Agile, and then you provide an explanation of why you think that either of them that you picked for the project you're going to talk about is suitable for them. That just like as I've done with the previous one that I talked about, I made mention of all these projects and I explained why the approach, either waterfall or agile, is suitable for them. So for your assignment also, Scrum Masters and anybody else that would love to join, because like Laomi said, this applies to everyone, not just the Scrum Masters alone. This is something that you all have to have an understanding of if you're going into this field, the project management field, either as a developer, a business analyst, tester, a project manager, and all that. You have to have an understanding of all this. So the next, like I explained, the next task that we're going to do is for you to just, prepare yourself, provide an example for each of those approaches and be able to defend them. You might be given, when we meet, just 2 minutes to do that, 1 minute for each approach. Okay. So that we can at least be able to get everybody to participate in that exercise. So that would be our short session for tonight. Any questions quickly before we go for tonight? Any question on any path or any part of the session tonight? Let me check the chat. Maybe we have
Yes.
some.
Yes,
Okay.
Mochi. Hi. I was just about to point that out to you. If anyone does have any question, please could you raise your hand so that we might be able to ask or answer your question rather in an orderly fashion. Okay. Mochi,
Yes.
okay.
I'm checking. I think we have just one question, and the question there says, in waterfall methodology, is it the end user that decide not to involve himself, or that is how it is designed? Okay, so it's not the end user that's how that approach is. Okay, so with waterfall approach, they do everything, and when they finish is when they get the end users, all the stakeholders, to come in and have a look. Okay, so let me give you an example of, let me use the building again. So the end user of a building will be the people that will live in it. Let's assume there is a residential building that is being built now. When you lay the foundation, you can't call the end users to come in. They don't understand what you have put there and everything. When your end user comes in for a residential building that is being built, would be when you have your what would they call those buildings now? The open rooms or something like that. Maybe when they've built they've completed the building and all that, and then they have a showroom or something. They have a pilot that they've completed. They've put all the furnitures fitting and everything in it, and the people are allowed to come in and have a look at that. So this is the way it looks and everything. So I'm an end user. I want to maybe I'm just going in to have a look at it, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I don't like this. The place they've put the kitchen. I don't like the way the living room is facing and all that and everything. That is me not being able to buy that any part of that apartment, any apartment in that building, because it's not suited to what I want. Okay. So what people will see initially would be the model. You'll have a look at the model. But we do know that model at times will show you here how things are, but the reality, the real thing is what you see at the end when the building has been made. The same goes for a car. So when they're building the car, when they have the skeletal part of it and all that, you can't test anything. I'm coming in, I'm looking at it. I'm not a mechanical engineer or automobile engineer or anything. I won't understand. All I want to see is a car that suits me. This is what I want. This is what I require. This is what I want. You understand, and everything. And I won't say that until the end of it. Okay, let me also use an example of a cake. Let's if I I request for a cake. I request for a wedding cake, and I've said, oh, this is what I want it to be. This is how I want it to be, and everything and all that and everything. I want it to be fruits. I want it to be this and everything and all that and everything. So when you start mixing the ingredients and all that, you won't call me to come and test the ingredients if it's tasting the way I wanted. You won't call me when it's in the oven to come and see if it's as big or brown as I wanted. You will only call me when the cake has been baked. And maybe you've put it out now. You said, oh, test it and all that. If I taste it, or it's too sugary, or there's not enough fruit in it and everything and all that, that comes after it has been made. I'm just using that to simplify things to help you to understand better. So it's that approach. That is the way that approach is. So it's not the users, the end users thinking, oh, I won't come in until you finished and all that. It's because even if they come in while you're doing it, as an end user, I might not understand, because that is the kind of project it is. Like we said, manufacturing, you won't go into the factory when some things are being manufactured now to go and check them or test them out and everything until it has come out. And that is because there are some projects that are just suited, like we said, to it. While with Agile, is suited to the kind of project where you can get the end users to come in and review things. And that is where it's useful. Now, don't get me wrong. Agile is not, how will I put it, an enhancement of Waterfall. Is just an alternative way to managing some other projects. So some projects the projects that Waterfall is suited for, Agile won't thrive in it, because that is not it won't for projects that do not need constant reviewing and things like that, like I've just explained about the construction and all that. Now you won't need Agile, won't work there. So it will only work on the project that is suited for. And Waterfall also works on his own project that is suited for. However, like I said, right now we're having hybrid where both Waterfall and Agile are being used together, to deliver a project. When it gets to that stage where they feel, okay, before we release it completely, we can get the user to come in, and have maybe a bit of a review and everything, because they know of those limitations that Waterfall has. There is an hybrid of the use of both Waterfall and Agile to manage a project, just so that at the end the customers are satisfied. I hope that is clear, Winifred. I think that's the only question.
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
you're welcome. Yeah, okay. So I think that's the only question we have. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone. If there